Good afternoon, this is TTT Live, Talk City 91.1 FM and the TTT Live online on Facebook. I'm DK Rossa with your TTT News Update. The Domestic Violence Amendment Bill was passed last night in the House of Representatives following a unanimous vote by both sides. The proposed amendments to the bill are to provide for emergency protection orders and to address weaknesses in the current legislation. Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi, during his contribution in the lower house, said amendments to the bill were long in coming.
1999, we did this act which replaced the earlier version of legislation. In 2006, there was a minor amendment to the law to include the reference to the Police Complaints Authority. And it has taken 21 years of could have, should have, or put it in Trinidadian, coulda, shoulda, wished I wanted to do for my colleague, the Honorable Member for Tobago East, to pilot this legislation here this afternoon.
During Wednesday's debate of the bill, Minister in the House of the Office of the Prime Minister, Ayanna Webster Roy, called on members of the public to stop sharing videos of domestic violence as a means of entertainment. She said the development is disturbing and called for immediate attention. Now, if you live in southwest Trinidad and woke up this morning without a pipe-borne water supply, the Water and Sewerage Authority says until 3 p.m. today, customers served by the Chatham Water Treatment Plant will experience an interruption in their supply. WASA says this has become necessary due to planned works by the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission at their Point Fortin substation, which will affect the power supply to the Chatham Water Treatment Plant. Among the areas affected, Quarry Village, Los Bajos, Rancho Quemado, Chatham North and South, Santa Flora, Palo Seco, Southern Main Road from Cap Deville Junction to Point Coco Extension Junction. The authority says it may take up to 24 hours for the service to normalize to some affected areas. And in what is seen as unusual, a huge plume of Sahara dust was expected to reach the United States today. Now, since weekend, thick clouds of dust were covering the Caribbean skies, and it was expected to reach the U.S. today. Forecasters say usually by the time dust from the Sahara has traveled this far, much of it would be dispersed and or deposited to the ocean, so that typically this long-range transport to the Americas would involve much lower concentrations. The initial dust outbreak was driven by a few different smaller storm systems over Central and West Africa. Now it is time for Conversations with HR. Today we are speaking with Kashta Omi, Group HR Industrial Relations Advisor for Ansa Macal Limited. Hello, Kashta, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, DK. Thanks very much for having me, and a wonderful afternoon to all your viewers.
Very glad we were able to make the connection. I want you to define for me good industrial relations. Let's start from there.
Well, good industrial relations really speaks to the type of relationship that you have with your business has or management has with its major stakeholders. In the unionized environment, it would be the relationship that's really between management and labor. In the non-unionized environment, it's also between work management and their employees. And there's a body of procedures, policies that guide how this relationship should function in the work environment, in the industrial landscape. And essentially, good industrial relations refers to those practices or policies that have been developed over time, things that have become acceptable for both managers, for management, and for labor as to how issues should be dealt with in the workplace.
Now, when you say makes it acceptable, it makes me wonder, sometimes someone may come and meet something, they're not happy with it, but at the same time, this is how I meet it, this is, so I don't necessarily accept it, but I'm working with it. No,
well,
sorry?
Yes, so the important thing to remember is that it has a lot to do with the practices. Some practices go across the national landscape. Some practices are sometimes focused within one particular organization or in one particular industry. What happens is that those practices or policies, those things become the acceptable ways and means between how management and labor interact.
Now, looking at the national landscape, as you mentioned, the tripartite relationship during this period of the pandemic. What are some of the things that you have looked at, observed, or hope to see from the tripartite relationship?
Well, when you say tripartite, it includes, of course, government, business, and labor. I know that there have been a lot of communication between government and the general leaders of labor and business. I would have hoped that there would have been some more on some of the more pertinent issues, so that we would have some more clarity on how to treat with some of the issues coming out of the COVID-19 period. Notwithstanding that, I know as well that there have been a lot of conversations between management and labor in particular in terms of how do we treat with this particular situation during the COVID period. And a lot of it will depend upon the individual organizations, their relationships with their unions, and their relationships with their staff. Each environment would have to build something that is mutually beneficial to their particular environment and to their particular situation to ensure the protection of lives and livelihoods.
Now, we are in the pandemic and a few things have arisen, one of them being the conversation of pandemic leave, whether or not you're allowed to get it, whether or not you're not allowed to get it. Also looking at the fact that people have children and they're wondering what to do with them. How does this factor into the industrial relations? And I ask you to, you can speak generally because you may not want to speak specifically to any one individual or company.
Well, as far as I understand it, the issue of pandemic leave was largely for persons within the public service. In the private sector where I'm based, there have been a number of ways in which the organizations have sought to treat with this particular situation. So, for instance, in my organization, the company has took it upon themselves to basically allow those persons with those situations relating to childcare to allow them time off to see about their children. And this is time off with pay. Some of them have entered into work from home relationships where that is possible. Some of them have been on rosters where they come in 2 or 3 days during the week. We have encouraged it as much as possible because we understand that this is an unprecedented situation, and ensuring that workers are able to still have a job and that they're also able to take care of their families, as the case may be, is important for us to understand that, you have to be a little bit flexible with your working relationships to account for these particular situations.
Now, with regard to the downturn in business, do you see some issues arising in terms of industrial relations with regard to people being furloughed, individuals being fired? What are some of those challenges that you see potentially arising?
Yeah, well, if it's not done correctly, there will always be issues. Our legislative landscape and the practices with industrial relations always suggest that you engage in consultation and that the issue of termination or the issues of retrenchment or following be left to be the last possible decision that an organization can make. So in an organization facing challenges, it is important to also look at what other alternative jobs that you can probably focus individuals on. You must ensure that if it is that you have a recognized majority union, that you engage with consultation with that particular union, explaining your situation and seeking feedback from the union, and in a non-unionized environment, seeking feedback from the workers around what are some of the things that can be done in the organization to avoid having to go to that, to any type of termination or loss of job. And it's a difficult road to walk, but if it is that you don't do it properly, if you don't follow the practices as laid down in the Retrenchment and Severance Benefit Act, if you don't follow the practices as in industrial relations as laid down in the many judgments, if you don't follow, what are the terms and conditions associated in collective agreements? As a business, you are going to find yourself in challenging situations,
and one of the challenging situations that we find ourselves in is the lack of time to continue this conversation, Kashda Ome. But we want to thank you for whetting our appetites, and I'm sure people will call for a part 2 of this. But this has been Conversations with HR. And remember, you can join us for live coverage on TTT, Chalk City 91.1 FM, Sweet 100.1 FM, Next 99.1 FM, as well as on Facebook at TTT Live Online for all your updates. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of the TTT crew, I'm DK Rostar. Bye for now.